Hi friends! If you want to reduce cancer risk, then you need to know about killer phytates. Do you eat bread? Maybe sourdough. I have here two kinds of sourdough bread. One of them doesn't have any phytates. Can you guess which one? I also have here some peanuts. So one of them doesn't have any phytates. Which one do you think has no phytates? Which one would you eat? And which one do you think I would eat? So when was the last time you baked? I have here two kinds of flour. Do you see the difference? One of them is refined white and the other one is whole wheat. So which one do you think has phytates? So I'll let you think about the answer to these questions, which will be very obvious after you understand more about phytates. Phytates were once thought of as anti-nutrients, but that's pretty old science. Since then, we've discovered that phytates have anti-cancer properties. And guess what? You have a ton of cancer cells in you right now. So do I. But it turns out that if you eat phytates, you can actually reduce your risk of cancer in a number of ways. So number one, phytates prevent DNA damage by neutralizing free radicals. Well, cancer, it basically thrives in environments with high inflammation and high oxidative stress. And if you have antioxidants, such as phytates, you can neutralize the free radicals that cancer cells make so that you can minimize DNA damage that further propagate cancer. And number two, it can trigger programmed cell death in tumor cells. That's called apoptosis. And this happens by activating pro-apoptotic proteins and inhibit anti-apoptotic proteins. And this results in more cancer cells dying. Phytates can also help to regulate your gene expression. So they modulate tumor suppressor genes like p53. They can halt cancer cell division at specific checkpoints, stopping tumor progression and inhibiting metastasis. So phytates, they slow down cancer cell proliferation by interfering with the cell cycle, thereby preventing them from multiplying uncontrollably. Now, if you suppress cancer cell invasion and angiogenesis, you weaken the cancer. So that means you take away the blood supply. Cancers need blood vessels to get nutrients, and by inhibiting the formation of new blood vessels, called angiogenesis, then they don't get their own personal blood supply. And if you reduce the nutrients, you suppress the cancer cell. So you are essentially cutting off the tumor's blood supply and starving tumors of nutrients if you eat phytates. The right nutrients will help your body thrive. And cancer cells are essentially your own cells that have divided uncontrollably. It's run amok. So if you can control its access to nutrients, then you can control cancer cell growth. Turns out that there's a nutrient that cancer cells love and they need it to grow, and that's called iron. So if you can reduce the access to iron from the cancer cells, then you literally have a roadmap to suppress cancer. And guess what phytates do? They bind to excess iron in your meals so that you don't absorb them in your body to feed cancer cells. You are essentially depriving cancer cells of iron, an essential nutrient that they require to grow. This, in turn, slows down their growth. So some studies suggest phytates actually also boost the immune system's ability to recognize and destroy cancer cells. So where can you find phytates? Basically in plants, but only in certain parts of them. And you have to eat enough of them to reduce your risk of cancer. So research suggests that phytates may be particularly effective against leukemia, breast, colon, prostate, and liver cancers. Phytates have been shown to reduce estrogen-dependent tumor growth to help in breast cancer. Phytates have been shown to inhibit androgen-dependent pathways that helps in prostate cancer. Phytates are strong antioxidants, reducing DNA damage in lung cancer. It helps detoxify and activate apoptosis for liver cancers. Now, I'm sure you know someone with one of these cancers, because there's almost 2 million new cancer diagnoses every year in the US alone. And it turns out tumor cells like to pile on phytates. And when they collect those phytates, they inhibit cell growth and proliferation. They interfere with their signaling, their ability to communicate. It promotes autophagy, a process where cancer cells digest themselves and die. They enhance your immune system, so they make tumor cells more recognizable with your own defenses so that your own immune system can take them out. Now, phytates, they activate natural killer cells, and it basically enhances their ability to target and destroy cancer cells. They stimulate macrophages to induce phagocytosis of cancer cells and damaged cells. They support T cells. They reduce inflammation in response to regulate tumor growth. But while you make an appointment, you can target specific foods to target cancer cells. Doesn't it give a new meaning to the statement, plants are trying to kill you. So which foods should you eat? So the good news is there is an abundance of plants with phytates. The bad news is processed food companies have processed the phytates out. I personally think this is one of the reasons why we're having an astronomical rate of cancer. People are overly consuming toxins in the food that cause cancer, and they're not eating the antidote, the foods with phytate. If you're eating baked goods like baked bread, well, this white sourdough has no phytates, whereas this whole wheat sourdough has phytates. And this is because it has the whole grain, the outer coating of the seed. A grain is essentially a seed. And just by changing your flour from a refined white flour on the bottom to a whole wheat flour on the top, you can reduce your blood sugars, your weight, but you can also start reducing your risk of cancer. In fact, this is why I won't eat white bread, even if it's sourdough. And I will only eat whole grain breads because I'm looking for the phytates. I mean, imagine if you fill your food up with white pasta, white bread, white rice, white pastries, white flour, you're basically not eating the antidote throughout your day. But if you can just switch those baked products to a whole grain flour, that includes your pizza and your hamburger bun, then you're gonna get phytates. Phytates are also known as inositol hexakinase IP6 or phytic acid, which are all words referring to the same molecule that serve as a primary storage form of phosphorus in plants. Now, though every plant has phytates, not every part of the plant has phytates. So for example, phytates, they're just simply not present in fruit. So if you're a fruitarian, then you're really not getting much phytates. But instead, if you eat the seeds, so if you added some nuts and seeds in this refined flour bread, you would actually be adding some phytates if you add the seeds right. I have two kinds of peanuts. One I got from an American store, and one I buy specifically from Asian stores. Do you see the difference? What do you think of the differences? They're both peanuts. They're probably different species. This one is roasted a bit longer without its shell. This one has a skin. I literally look for the skin to eat because the skin is where the majority of the phytates are at. So I eat peanut skin, but I really don't eat peanuts without skin. And this isn't cheap, these peanuts with skin, and I have to go out of my way to find it, right? So my son, he made peanut butter out of my peanuts with skin. But the problem is, he took all the skin out. He literally was rolling the skin in a towel, and he took it all out to make his peanut butter. So this is what his peanut butter looks like. It's kind of white, right? It looks more like this color, but I want it to be more like this color. And obviously, I was flabbergasted. I couldn't believe he took the best part of the peanut out. He did make fresh peanut butter. He basically just took my peanuts, took the skin out, and then kept blending it. And it turns into creamy peanut butter. I wish he would have taken these peanuts because I really wanted to eat the skin. So I have a question. Would you rather eat a refined sourdough bread or a store-bought whole grain bread? And this is wheat bread, but it also has like rye and flaxseed and millet. So which one would you rather eat? Sourdough bread made out of refined white flour or this store-bought bread? I would rather eat this store-bought bread because this actually has the phytates, whereas this doesn't, right? This is lacking fiber. This lacks so many nutrients. This is a refined food. In my opinion, even though it's sourdough, I consider it junk food. So you can eat it. Just know that if you're filling your plates with refined flour all day long, then it will take away precious real estate for you to eat better quality food. I have here a bagel. This is yellow. You see how it's yellow? I don't know why it's yellow. Let me read the ingredients on this bagel. Enriched flour, so it has wheat flour, malted barley flour, and it has niacin, iron, thiamine mononitrate, riboflavin, folic acid. So basically this is refined flour that has been fortified with vitamins as well as minerals, right? Because it has iron. So it has water, cinnamon nuggets, so it's probably this color because it's cinnamon, and then it has sugar, palm oil, corn flour, cinnamon, dextro, cornstarch, brown sugar, sugar. Contains 2% or less of the following ingredients: yeast, wheat gluten, malted barley extract, palm oil shortening, salt, cornmeal, cinnamon, natural flavor, color. Well, this is why it has caramel, turmeric, and beta-carotene. It has soybean and or canola oils, dextrose enzyme, ascorbic acid, sesame flour. This is a highly refined food that I would caution you from eating, even though it has turmeric in it.
Hi friends!
I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes, and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now. The richest dietary sources of phytates are in whole grains. So wheat, basically brown rice or red rice or black rice. It's in oats. It's in barley and quinoa. It's also in legumes such as chickpeas and lentils and black beans and soybeans. It's also found in nuts such as almonds, walnuts, cashews, and pistachios. So this is why anybody on a low carb, no carb diet, well, you're just missing out on the antidote to protect against cancer. And those are phytates. So this bread, I said, had seeds like flax seeds. Well, sesame seeds have phytates. Sunflower seeds have phytates. Pumpkin seeds have phytates. Another source of phytates includes vegetables such as tubers and leafy greens. However, vegetables are much lower in phytates. So if you're on a carnivore diet, just basically eating protein and vegetables, well, you're missing out on phytates too. So let me tell you about 10 specific foods that are high in phytates. Number 1 is wheat bran. You can add them to your smoothies or your breakfast oatmeal. Number 2 are colored rice. Brown or colored rice, preferably, you soak them, rinse them, and dump out the arsenic. So when it comes to rice, you gotta be careful of the arsenic. Lentils, you can sprout them and ferment them before you cook them. Chickpeas, you can soak them before you cook. It'll make it easier. Almonds, you can soak overnight to reduce the phytate contents. Walnuts, you can consume raw. Flax seeds, you want to grind them fresh before you eat them. Now, pumpkin seeds are best eaten raw or very lightly roasted. And soybeans, well, you can ferment them and eat them in tempeh or even in miso. They have lower rates of phytates. Quinoa is another source of phytates, which is a great substitute for rice. And sometimes I mix it with oats to give it that kind of ricey, sticky feel. But remember, only certain parts of the plant has phytates. So the grain, the legume, the nut, the seed, and the leafy parts have phytates. But if you refine those plants, just like in refined white flour, you're going to lose those phytates. Now, to understand why plants contain phytates, you need to know what phytates do for the plant. Now, do you remember I said earlier that phytates store phosphorus? And do you know why plants need phosphorus? Well, it's the same reason why you and I would need phosphorus. Phosphorus is required for energy and growth. Now, phytates really serve 3 basic roles in the plant. You already know one of them. It can help to store phosphorus. Number 2, they're critical for growth and reproduction. And number 3, they're the plant's immune system. Now, what do you think they're protecting the plant from? And why do you think phytates aren't in fruit? Well, I'll give you a hint. How do you think a plant can guarantee that it will survive and have progeny? Through seeds, right? So the plants need seeds to survive. But how do they spread their seeds? They get the animals by eating fruit. So by knowing this, where do you think phytates are concentrated? What part of the plant needs protection? The seed or the fruit? It would be the seed. But what part of the seed? You want to protect the inside or the outside? It would be the outside, the skin. And that's why blanched almond flour is not a health food. It's missing the skin. It's missing the phytates. And this is why I'll eat skin on peanuts, but I avoid peanuts without skin. Now, I mentioned that phytates are a part of the plant's immune system. Now, how do you think it protects the seed? Remember how I talked about how it binds iron? Well, phytates inhibit iron absorption, not just in you, but in other organisms. And many different species need iron to grow, including bacteria, right? That can eat your plant. So if you were a plant, what part of the plant would you make the most protective? Your seed, right? Just like how parents, we would protect our children. We want to basically keep them in a house forever. And the skin of the seed keeps their kids in the house forever. And this is why seed is a lot more difficult to spoil as opposed to a leaf. And when you remove the iron, lots of bacteria don't survive. Phytates inhibit iron absorption in bacteria through iron chelation, meaning they bind to iron and make it unavailable for bacteria to use. Now, phytates, they have a very strong affinity for divalent metal ions, like iron, but it can also bind to calcium. And when phytates bind to iron, they form insoluble complexes, which prevents a bacteria from accessing the iron that they need to grow and metabolize. And many bacteria, especially pathogenic bacteria that live in your gut potentially, rely on iron for essential functions like DNA synthesis, respiration, and enzyme activity. And by sequestering iron, phytates limit bacterial proliferation, effectively starving the bacteria, the pathogenic bacteria. The thing is, bacteria produce molecules called siderophores to scavenge iron from the environment. And so phytates, they outcompete siderophores, therefore preventing bacteria from pulling the iron from your food. And some studies suggest that phytates might even interfere with siderophore production directly. Hence, phytates are beneficial to promote a healthy gut microbiome in you. Did you know that colon cancer rates are climbing, especially in young adults? Several gut pathogens have been linked to cancer development, particularly colon cancer. Chronic infection, chronic inflammation, and chronic toxin production by certain bacteria will contribute to DNA damage, immune evasion, and then tumor growth. And one of the strongest microbial links to colon cancer is Fusobacterium nucleatum. This bacteria promotes inflammation and suppresses the immune system. It literally helps cancer cells evade detection. The bacteria also produces adhesion molecules that interact with the host, with you if it's in you, to trigger cancer growth. Have you heard of E. coli? Well, certain strains like PKS E. coli produce a genotoxin called colibactin. That genotoxin causes DNA breaks and mutations, which initiate tumor formation. And this bacteria is found in higher levels in patients with colon cancer. What about Bacteroides fragilis? Some of them produce enterotoxins, which disrupts the human gut barrier integrity, and it triggers inflammation that can lead to DNA damage, increase cell proliferation like cancer cells. This is a major risk factor for colon cancer. Higher enterotoxigenic Bacteroides strains have been found in people with colorectal tumors. But if you eat phytate-rich diets, they're linked to a reduced risk of colon cancer. Now, human data studies suggest that individuals consuming whole grains, legumes, and nuts have a lower incidence of colorectal cancers. And maybe it's because the phytates, they reduce the inflammation in the environment, in your gut. They limit iron access by bad bacteria, as well as the iron stress on your colonic cells. And we know who are high risk for colorectal cells. These include individuals who consume a high amount of red and processed meats full of iron and nitrates, and people who don't eat enough fiber. Also, sedentary lifestyles and people who are obese, smokers, heavy alcohol consumers, and age. Actually, if you're 45 and up, get a colonoscopy to screen for colon cancer. Because if they can find it early, if they can find that polyp, they can remove it, and that's the end of the cancer. And if you've done any of this in the past, eating junk food, and eating lots of meat, or eating toxins and processed food, you should really talk to your doctor to go get some screening. Have you heard of Helicobacter pylori or H. pylori? It is well known to cause stomach cancer, but some studies suggest it might contribute to colon cancer too. And it produces toxins called CAG-A and VAC-A that damage DNA and promote chronic inflammation. Another species called Streptococcus gallolyticus, formerly known as Streptococcus bovis, is strongly associated with colorectal cancer and precancerous polyps. It's thought to drive cancer by triggering chronic inflammation and suppress your immune system. Infections with this Streptococcus bacteria is a red flag for undiagnosed colon cancer. So anyone with an infection with this bacteria anywhere in the body should get a colonoscopy. Clostridium septicum is another stool pathogen that is linked to colorectal cancer leukemia. It can induce spontaneous gangrene in the gut that allows a pathogen to enter the bloodstream and cause sepsis. And unfortunately, pooping by itself doesn't get rid of these pathogenic bacteria because they actually hide in little tiny crevasses in your colon. They make protective biofilms that evade your immune system as well as antibiotics. And guess what? Iron is crucial for biofilm development. And when you restrict iron, you reduce it in your food. You eat phytate-rich foods. You reduce the biofilms that the bacteria can make so that they don't evade your immune system. Remember the Civil War? Do you know how the South lost the American Civil War? They literally ran out of food. So Americans at that time, whether you're from the South or the North, had to walk over 20 miles a day. And if you don't power soldiers with food, then that's the best way to lose a war. They run out of energy. And the same is true with the war against pathogenic germs. These bacteria, they need iron to grow. So if you reduce the iron in your diet, the heme iron, the red meat, not only do you starve the bacteria, but you prevent them from hiding from your immune system through destruction or prevention of biofilms. Now, I've been saying in my other videos that iron is also a very difficult mineral for your body to process because it causes a lot of oxidative stress, especially heme iron. Just think of a rusty nail. It gets exposed to water and it rusts. And your body is like 70% water. Heme iron is found in animals. Plants don't contain any heme iron, but plants do have iron. They're just not directly heme iron. And by reducing the amount of heme iron-rich foods you're eating, basically animal protein, you are reducing the most potent source that causes oxidative stress to your cells and that feeds pathogenic bacteria. They literally need that to grow. And this is why I'm really skeptical that plant-based fake meats injected with heme iron are healthy. But I'm sure if you're going to eat meat with heme iron versus you're eating a plant with heme iron, then actually that plant has been shown to reduce inflammation. But regardless of that, if you're not eating the antidote, phytates, rich in whole foods, whole grains, if your sandwich is made out of white sourdough, not seeded with whole grains or beans or seeds, then you may want to try and switch your diet. Because by eating more phytate-rich whole foods, you can reduce the pathogenic bacteria that are flourishing in your gut unchecked. And by the way, do you think one serving is enough? So if you have trillions of microbes in your gut, do you think one piece of bread, even if it's whole grain, is enough to counteract all the iron that you're eating in your other meals throughout the day? Yeah, I don't think so. Right? There's not enough food to feed the trillions of bacteria. And we know that there are plenty of studies to show that when we eat whole foods, that it lowers our risk of cancer. And in fact, some slow-growing cancers like prostate cancer has been shown to be 100% reversed by eating whole food plant-based diets. Now, of course, this isn't medical advice. So if you're struggling with any issues, please see your own personalized medical doctor because depending on how advanced your cancer is, you may need adjuvant therapy. But you have to do the right diet. Literally, this is plant-based diet, but it isn't a whole food. And you can't just go and eat a bunch of potato chips and think you're doing a good job too, right? That's not a whole food. Neither is eating these peanuts with no skin. This is not a whole food. So now some of you may be wondering, what about you? What about your needs for iron? And will it reduce your iron source? Well, the thing is, you don't actually lose iron unless you're bleeding. So the only way you lose iron is if you donate blood, you have a bad accident and you're bleeding, or you're overtaking Motrin and you're bleeding in your gut, or you're peeing out blood in your urine. Or you may be a young woman and actively menstruating. You have to have some sort of blood loss to lose iron. Otherwise, when you eat iron, it just accumulates in your body. You don't just spontaneously lose it. The body can't expel it unless you're bleeding. However, if you are anemic, then yes, excessive phytates during a meal will reduce your iron absorption and prevent you from getting that iron in your meal. So phytates can reduce the bioavailability of iron by forming insoluble complexes, particularly with non-heme iron found in plants. And non-heme iron is already less bioavailable than heme iron. And yes, this can lead to decreased iron absorption, which is a concern for individuals with iron deficiency anemia. But this can also be advantageous for people with hemochromatosis. And people with hemochromatosis who overabsorb iron in their food, so they have excess iron, where do you think that goes? It gets trapped in the liver and causes chronic liver inflammation and ultimately fibrosis, scarring, and cirrhosis. So this can permanently damage the liver. And remember how I said you don't really lose iron unless you bleed. So guess what the treatment is for people with hemochromatosis? Scheduled bloodletting. But if you don't have hemochromatosis and you want to maximize your iron absorption, then here are several ways to do it. Number one, you can sprout and cook your seeds. because when you soak your seeds, you actually remove some of the phytates. Sprouting seeds or grains or legumes, it activates phytase enzymes, which break down phytic acid. This then increases the bioavailability of minerals like iron, calcium, and zinc. At the same time, you enhance digestibility of the food and you're reducing the anti-nutrient effects. And this potentially can improve your gut microbiome health by making the nutrients more accessible. So number 2, you can eat vitamin C rich foods with the iron-rich foods to increase absorption. In Asian families, we end all our meals with fruit. The ability to reduce iron absorption is why phytates are considered to be anti-nutrients. But I've explained that this property can be actually extremely beneficial to prevent cancer and many chronic diseases, which many social media influencers who advocate a carnivore diet, a low-carb diet, a high red meat diet, they don't understand. And this is why it's important to not only know nutrition, but health and medicine. This is also why supplementing with iron should be taken with caution, even if it's in your multivitamin. You don't lose iron unless you're bleeding. And certain supplements need to be catered for individuals. So we need to really stop blindly recommending supplements that have narrow therapeutic windows. That means if you go too low or a little bit too high, then that can actually cause lots of side effects in people. And most people don't need more iron. Iron, particularly free iron, can catalyze the formation of hydroxyl radicals via the Fenton reaction. So the Fenton reaction reacts with your body's own production of hydrogen peroxide to make more free radicals. And these are highly reactive, highly damaging. It'll damage your protein, your DNA, your cell membranes. And this contributes to oxidative stress and chronic diseases. Now, I recognize iron is essential for many biological functions, but excessive free iron can be harmful due to its potential to cause oxidative damage. Hence, we shouldn't be overeating iron-rich foods unless specifically instructed by your physician. Heme iron found in red and processed meats is associated with an increased risk of colorectal cancers, as well as other cancers. And it's due to 3 properties. Number 1, it causes lipid peroxidation and gut inflammation by the formation of N-nitrosyl compounds. Now, these are literally carcinogenic metabolites that can damage DNA. Number 2, it causes lipid peroxidation. So the heme iron catalyzes oxidation of fats, forming aldehydes that are linked to cancer. And number 3, it causes gut inflammation. It promotes a pro-inflammatory environment conducive to tumor growth. And in addition, gut inflammation then allows pathogenic organisms that are already there to invade your tissue, even to leave your gut and go elsewhere in the body. And for those of you who are really into chemistry, you'll notice that iron is a divalent cation like calcium. And so you may be wondering, how does phytates affect your bone health? Now, contrary to earlier beliefs, higher phytate intake correlates with better bone density and reduced fracture risks. And a large-scale study found that postmenopausal women who with high phytate intake had lower bone loss rates and higher bone marrow density. Phytates reduce bone reabsorption by inhibiting osteoclast activity, preventing excessive calcium excretion in the urine. So it's not just absorption of calcium that determines how strong your bones are. It's how much calcium you can actually save in your body. But it's not just phytates that have anti-cancer properties in your food. Hence, a diversity of food is important to achieve on a daily basis. And if you want to know specific foods to eat, well, watch the next video.